In 1926, Carter G. Woodson pioneered the celebration of Negro History Week as a way to combat the lack of representation of black history and black contributions within formal American academia. This week has now become a month, and for many of us, we observe, research, and celebrate black history all year long. In the spirit of Dr. Woodson, we seek to uplift the life and legacy of Dr. Percy Bates, a true living legend within the education community. Dr. Bates has lived an extraordinary life of service, integrity, and dedication. As you're watching this short documentary, learn and be inspired by the life of Dr. Bates. In dedication to the mission started by Carter G. Woodson, In Demand will feature Black History moments throughout the month of February. Find us across social media or visit us at IamInDemand.com.
My name is Percy Bates. I'm a retired professor from the University of Michigan. My first job was working with adolescent mentally impaired students. Certainly a lot of them, in my estimation, were not mentally impaired. They had come from very poor backgrounds, were poorly educated, and that was their problem more so than being mentally impaired. I realized that it's really the classroom teachers who makes the initial recognition, and so then I thought maybe I'd get into teacher education, and that would solve, the problem. A lot of my time was really spent trying to get and work with parents. I was pushing that if anybody should really say something about the child on these clinics, the parent should be in the center and be able to ask all of these professionals, don't explain to me in 6 pages about my child. I know all of that. You don't have to tell me that. But what I'm here to ask, with all of your knowledge that you have here, I can tell you what my child is doing. Can any of you help me understand what that is? During President Carter's term, I was appointed as a Deputy Assistant Secretary in the U.S. Office of Education, and my job was to direct the Office of Special Education. I had been attending conferences and participating and giving papers and talking. And so someone who was out there in the field said, how about him? And so I said, I got there, and for me anyway, for someone who was on a journey to correct what seemed to me to be some real problems. Kids who were misdiagnosed. We didn't have any strict curriculum for them that had anything to do with the kids. The teachers were being poorly trained. There was an attitude that teachers working with kids who were not very smart didn't have to be very smart themselves, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me, because I think they need to be smarter if there's any such thing. I think it takes more working with those kids than it does with sort of normal kids. But as I said, making that progression was very exciting to me, because I thought, aha, now I am here where we can make decisions and change the rules. I didn't solve it. I just made a dent in it, but I'll take the dent, because it was worth it. I was working in Ypsilanti as a school psychologist, but I was also the chair of the program for the mentally impaired in the school district. And the wife of a professor at U of M was teaching in Ypsilanti. And then she introduced me to her husband. At the time, I was working on a PhD. U of M had an opening for someone to supervise student teachers in special education. And so they invited me over to do that. said, would you be interested? And I said, why, sure, because now I can leave my office, go down the hall, take a class, and then move my PhD along a lot faster. When I finished the PhD, there were 2 other African-American faculty in the School of Education, but the student population was very, very low. And I think you probably remember what they call the Black Action Movement, which became the BAM strike, where the school was actually shut down for a period of time. And there were, I guess, about 10 demands. And among those were increasing the number of minority faculty and minority students. They were arguing then that the student population ought to mirror the population in the state. And at that time it was about 18%, but they weren't asking for 18%, they asked for about 10%. And so I was about to leave, and the dean said, wait a minute, I mean, you're here, and we're looking for minority faculty. I don't think I can let you go. And so I stayed on, and as I said, the rest is history. In addition to some of the other stuff at the university, for 22 years I served as what they call the faculty athletic representative to the Big Ten and the NCAA. As a condition of membership in the NCAA, you have to designate a faculty member to represent you. That was the role that I played, and part of that is just sort of monitoring the progress of student athletes as they move through school. Just recently, I got a call from the assistant to the president of the NCAA, and he called me and he said, Mark, the president, would like to set up a conversation, a call with you. And I thought, well, I haven't been involved now for a year or so. I said, why would Mark want to talk to me? So the next day we got on the phone call and we chatted because we knew each other from the NCAA. And then he said, I've created an award in the name of Pat Summitt. And he said, and for this year, we've discovered that your name just continues to come up. And therefore, we have decided to award you the Pat Summitt Award for this year. I sort of grew up with Pat Summitt in women's basketball at Tennessee, and I just couldn't imagine me receiving an award in her name. And he said, not only that, it comes with $10,000 to your favorite charity. And I said, well, that's terrific. And I have a couple of friends who have Parkinson's. And so I said, I've just said, you can think about it. I said, I don't have to think about it. I want it to go to the Parkinson Foundation. And I mean, when I think about something like that, when your peers recognize something that you've done just because you do it. The award was for someone who had worked with student athletes over a long period of time. And you do that because that's what you do. But you realize that people are looking at you all the time. And then to be recognized by the peers tells you that, yeah, I guess I did all right. This friend of mine was also an athlete, had been involved with the athletic department. And so we got together and we thought, well, he had been running his consulting firm for a number of years. So we thought, well, let's put some of this knowledge together. So what we mainly do is leadership training and executive coaching. And I guess I'm finding really a fascinating shift from where I was. The amazing thing to me is that I just had a conversation with an executive 2 days ago who was telling me that he feels that he must always have the answer. And I said, well, why do you feel that way? He said, well, because I'm the leader, I'm supposed to have the answers. Well, what about all those people you work with? Don't they have answers too? So part of the process that I'm pushing with people is you don't lead from the front, you lead from the back. That's where if you're going to be a leader, that's where you ought to be. It took me, of all the years of teaching, to realize that one person standing in front of a class trying to educate people is the wrong way to do it. So the last 3 years, I decided to teach from the back of the room, where I would do the syllabus, I would lay out the readings, and then each week I'd have 2 students who would design the presentation. They'd find the videos, the readings, whatever they would go with it, and they would teach it. And for the full length of that class, they taught the class. Doing this over about 3 years, I began to see it unfold to where the students really blossomed. And at the end of the term, one student said, we didn't have one instructor, that we had 27. And I said, you're right, you're absolutely right. There's nothing, that I could have done short of standing on my head to produce what they produced. They were bright, they were creative, all the ideas came that I, well beyond where I was on technology and all of that stuff. So from that to me tells me I didn't need to get up there. I can use all of this knowledge. And the crowning glory for me was a student who wrote a note to me that said, thank you for providing a safe place for us to learn. Now, as a teacher and instructor, what more do you want? One, you've got to develop the empathy to understand that if that's the role that you're going to play, then you're going to have to get below the surface and to get to a real meaning relationship with a child. I always say, this is one of my favorite slogans, that when you're teaching, children don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And that's if I had to give a word to teachers, that you gotta care. And if you can do that, you'll be all right. You'll feel a lot better, and so will the kids.